Okay, for today's lesson, we are going to be talking about thesis statements, topic sentences, and outlines. We are going to take a look at understanding what thesis statements are, what topic sentences are, how to organize an outline, and we are also going to take a look at some examples for each of these that are relevant to the particular essay that we are working on right now, which is responding to um, La Follette's argument in licensing parents. To start off with, let's talk about thesis statements and how it is that we can create both a strong and purposeful thesis. Well, when we're looking at a thesis statement, essentially what we're just saying is that the thesis statement is the main point for the entire essay. So if you are writing an argumentative essay, then your main point is your main argument. Okay? In your response paper, your main point is going to be a response-based argument. So essentially you're going to argue what your response is to La Follette's licensing parents. When we're looking at thesis statements, we want to make sure that the thesis statement is strong and purposeful. So what do we mean by strong? Well, when we have a strong thesis statement, we have a thesis statement that includes the topic, so what is the context of what's being discussed, the controlling idea, which is the point that you are trying to argue within your paper, and then the context for what your major supporting points are going to be. So essentially, yes, having a topic and a controlling idea is great, but being able to provide for your reader the context for what you are going to be using in order to reason that your argument is sound is going to be the best way to communicate what you are trying to prove within your essay. Now, purposeful thesis statements. So what do we mean by purposeful thesis statements? Well, purposeful thesis statements mean that they reflect the essay's main purpose. So if we're thinking about essay one, the main purpose for us writing this essay is to respond in part or in whole to La Follette's argument. So we're either responding to part of his argument or parts of his argument, or we're responding to his argument as a whole. But whatever we are doing, we are arguing our response to his argument within licensing parents. Now, if you are writing a thesis statement for a different essay, then your essay's main purpose may be different. In that case, your purposeful thesis statement will show a different purpose than maybe to response. So there are different types of purposes in essays. Maybe the main purpose is to argue a position or to argue a solution, or maybe it is to report information. Whatever the purpose is, or the main purpose for an entire essay, we want to make sure that our main point is reflecting that main purpose. Now, just because we have a main purpose, that doesn't mean that sometimes our paragraphs will not be meeting other purposes. So sometimes we are responding, and in order to respond appropriately, maybe we have to describe something, or maybe we have to explain something. So the main purpose is the overarching purpose for our essay, and therefore all of our main points, whether it's thesis statements or topic sentences, need to reflect what that main purpose is. So when we're looking at strong topic sentences, we said a topic, a controlling idea, and some context of the essay's main purpose is what would make a strong and purposeful main point. So let's look at each of those parts. So a topic is what the essay or the paragraph is about. So if we have a topic and a controlling idea, then we have a main point. Well, it depends on whether that main point is for the entire essay or whether it's for a paragraph. So if it's for an entire essay, we call it a thesis statement. If it's for a paragraph, then we would call it a topic sentence. So a topic is what the essay or paragraph is about, and the controlling idea is the point that's being made regarding the topic. So it is essentially the most crucial part of our main point. And as I provided for you guys when I was talking on the previous slide, we want to make sure that our main points are reflecting that main purpose. Some examples of main purposes: to respond, which means that we would have response-based main points; to describe, which would mean that we would have descriptive main points; to analyze, which would mean that we would need to have analytical main points; or to evaluate, which means we would have evaluative main points. So in any case, in order to meet that main purpose, the main points need to reflect that main purpose. So let's take a look at some examples. In the beginning of the semester, you guys needed to read on the rhetorical situation. So your textbook, if you're in the 6th edition, the rhetorical situation is covered in chapters 5 through 9, where it talks about, audience, it talks about purpose, it talks about medium, it talks about design, genre, and it talks about what each of those are and how they sort of provide context for a rhetorical situation. Well, what's important for us is to make sure that we are understanding the connection between the rhetorical context and what we are trying to accomplish. So in this example, the genre that we are doing is a response essay, just like our essay 1. And the purpose is to respond in part or in whole to an argument. So again, this reflects our purpose for essay 1. So here's an example thesis statement that we're going to take a look at. It says, while I agree that La Follette's proposal is theoretically desirable, I disagree with his conclusion that it is also practical because he does not account for its strain on established child care systems nor its inherent denial of rights. So I'm going to take a moment. I want you to read over that. And what I want you to do is, 1, identify the topic. So what is this thesis statement referring to? What is the topic that's being discussed? And then what is the controlling idea? So where is it that we can see the controlling idea within the thesis? I'm going to pause this for just a second to give you a moment. Okay, so let's take a look at this. First, let's identify what the topic is. So the topic here I have in bold and I have underlined. Well, what is it that this thesis statement is referring to? Well, 1, we know it's referring to La Follette's proposal. We see the topic is underlined here. And then the controlling idea, which is the point that we are making about La Follette's proposal. Now remember, this controlling idea is based on what the main purpose of the essay is. So remember, if we're doing a response, we are responding to this proposal or this argument within his proposal. So the controlling idea is clearly a response. So agree that it's theoretically desirable, disagree that it's practical, okay? And then notice that we are starting to provide some context for why we are saying it's not practical. So the very next step that we're going to do is we're going to take a look at whether or not we can identify the context that is provided in this thesis statement for the major supporting points. So based on this thesis statement, what are the major supporting points that will be discussed in the body of the essay if this is the thesis statement for that essay? Well, you notice that I have these two phrases italicized. So the context, the thing that is going to be used as support for us responding that La Follette's proposal is not practical, is that we're saying there's a strain on an established childcare systems, or that there would be if we were to put this into place, and that there is some sort of inherent denial of rights. So that's probably going to be talking about the right of parenthood, okay, or reproductive rights. So you'll notice that we have these within the thesis statement. We have clearly responded, so we've met the main purpose. We do have the topic, so we've provided that. And we do have a controlling idea. So we include the purpose, and we have all of the all of the criteria for having a strong thesis statement as well. So again, if we're looking at this to determine if it meets the main purpose, what parts of it are letting us know that it is a response? So I have here bolded and italicized some things that let us know that this is a response, that we're saying that it is theoretically desirable, and we're saying that it is not practical, or that we disagree that it is practical. Now, there are other ways to still say a thesis statement like this without saying I, and I've provided those on lecture notes within Blackboard, examples of how we could still respond without using those I statements. When it comes to your main points, it's okay for you to, in this essay, because it meets the rhetorical situation, to use first person if you want to. If you're uncomfortable with that, you can remove those I statements. So essentially what we could do and still have a response in this thesis statement is we could say something like, while La Follette's proposal is theoretically desirable, his conclusion that it is also practical does not account for the strain or possible strain on the established childcare system, nor the inherent denial of rights. So there, in that case, I've just removed those I statements and rephrased the thesis statement in a way that doesn't include those. Again, that example is on the lecture notes that I provided in Blackboard. So we can tell the thesis statement is meeting the main purpose, which is to respond. It is a response-based, and that it is responding specifically to La Follette's proposal, and it's talking about the different arguments within that proposal. It's talking about La Follette's claim that licensing parents is theoretically desirable, and we're saying, okay, sure, maybe it's desirable, but we're in this thesis statement, we're saying it's not practical, okay? So we are breaking down the parts of the argument that work, or that we are going to respond and say do work, or the parts of the argument that we believe don't work, okay? Now, how do we apply this same information to topic sentences? So again, remember that thesis statements are about the essay as a whole, and topic sentences are main points that are relevant to body paragraphs, or paragraphs that are supporting a main point that in turn is supporting the main argument of our essay. So just like a thesis statement, a topic sentence is a main point, but again, it's for a paragraph rather than for an entire essay. Just like the thesis statement, a topic sentence needs to be strong and purposeful. And it is going to be doing the same thing as a thesis statement, except it's going to be doing it on a smaller scale. So it still needs to include the topic. It still needs to provide the controlling idea or the point. And it does need to provide some context of what that major supporting point is. The difference here is that our topic sentence is only dealing with one supporting point at a time. So we only want to reason for one point at a time before we move on to the next. And just like the thesis statement, it needs to be purposeful, so it needs to reflect the essay's main purpose. So if we are breaking this down, we have a topic plus the controlling idea plus a major supporting point is the main point for a topic sentence. So that gives us the main point. The topic, obviously in this case, is what the paragraph is about. And then the controlling idea is that what's the point that's being made regarding that topic. The major supporting point in this will be the reason to believe the point being supported. So if I were to take a look at La Follette's argument, and La Follette makes an argument that licensing parents is theoretically desirable, and then he gives reasons for why it is theoretically desirable. So those reasons that he provides are the rationale for why we should believe that licensing parents is theoretically desirable. We need to sort of mimic that same sort of argument structure in our own essays. We provide a main argument. We provide supporting arguments or supporting reasons that are going to allow our reader to believe the point that we are making. So this is, later on, we'll talk about the hierarchy of an argument and how we can reflect that in an outline. So let's take this same sort of exercise, but now we're looking at the rhetorical context for a particular paragraph. So we're doing the same. The genre is a response essay. The main purpose is to respond in part or in whole to an argument. And the thesis for that essay, let's say it's a good, strong thesis statement, and it is a purposeful thesis statement. That thesis statement would be, while I agree that La Follette's proposal is theoretically desirable, I disagree with his conclusion that it is also practical because he does not account for its strain on the established childcare systems nor its inherent denial of rights. Okay, so that's a thesis statement. So now what we need to do is we have to create points that help our reader believe that thesis statement. So let's take this example of a topic sentence. It says, I agree with La Follette's argument. I want you to look at that topic sentence. Is that topic sentence strong, and is it purposeful? So I want you to take a moment to think about that. So remember, strong says that it includes the topic, and it includes the controlling idea, and it provides some context for the major support. And then purposeful is, does it meet the main purpose? So in this case, is it a response-based? So let's take a look at it. So no, this is not a strong and purposeful topic sentence. Well, what's missing from this topic sentence? Well, one, we don't have the controlling idea. All we see is that this writer agrees with La Follette's argument. Well, what part of the argument do we agree with? We don't have any sort of context for why we agree with that argument. There's not enough information in this topic sentence. We don't have a controlling idea, and we don't have the context of that major supporting point. So in this case, we do not have a strong and purposeful topic sentence. So let's say that we add a little bit more to this topic sentence. Okay, we've revised it. We realize that it's not strong, it's not purposeful, right? So now we say, well, I agree with La Follette's argument that licensing parents is desirable. It's a little bit better, right? Let's think about whether this is both a strong and purposeful topic sentence. It is purposeful, but it is not strong. So yes, it gives us some context of response. It is a response-based, but it is not really giving us what the context of that major supporting point is going to be. Like, what about licensing parents is desirable? What part of that do we agree with? We get a better idea of which part of the argument we agree with, but we don't get an idea of why we agree with that part of the argument. So it's really missing that major supporting point. So let's revise it again. So it says, I agree with LaFollette's argument that licensing parents is desirable because the regulation of parenting could reduce child abuse. Let's think about that topic sentence now. Yes, this is a strong and purposeful topic sentence. It supports the thesis statement. It meets the purpose, the main purpose for our essay, which is response-based. It includes the topic, right, and the specific topic. It provides the controlling idea, and it gives us that major point that will be argued. So remember, we're writing an argument paper ourselves. It's just that it is a response argument, right? So we are, within our argument, we are responding to LaFollette's own argument in his proposal. So let's break that down. You'll see we've included the topic. The topic is LaFollette's argument, specifically LaFollette's argument that licensing parents is desirable. And the controlling idea is that we agree with that part of his argument. And then the major point, like, why is it that we agree with that part, that licensing parents is desirable? Well, notice that we've said, well, because the regulation of parenting could reduce child abuse. So that part that's italicized, because the regulation of parenting could reduce child abuse, that is the part that we are developing in our body paragraph based on this topic sentence. So now, as we are developing that body paragraph, we know that what we need to provide for our reader is how regulation of parenting could actually reduce child abuse. So in this case, this is now where we are developing our own argument. So let's look at how we might do that within an outline form. How is it that we can create a formal organized outline that provides the hierarchy or the plan for our own essay? So here I've given you an example of the basic outline structure. It needs to be an MLA format. Remember, that is 12-point font. It should be like Times New Roman or Arial, or even Calibri, as long as it's 12-point font, but make sure it's one of those three fonts, okay? It needs to be double spaced, the entire thing, including the header. You need to have your page number. You need to have a centered title that's not bolded, not underlined, and that is capitalized appropriately. The outline, a formal outline that we are doing, will provide the full thesis statement, and it'll have that label that says thesis. So it'll say thesis, and then it'll have that complete sentence of our thesis statement. Remember, we've gone over thesis statements. Make sure it's strong, make sure it's purposeful, make sure that it is being supported by the rest of your points. Now, with basic outlines, one thing that we need to remember is the Roman numeral level, so the top level, will be our major points, our main claims that help us support the main argument. The capital letters are the reasons why we should believe that first major point. So the reasons why your reader should believe that point. That could be, key points, major details, major supporting points. All of these are saying the same thing. Essentially, it is reasons why we should, or the reader should, believe that point. And then if you have any additional levels, this might be further support or analysis or evidence, or possible objections that need response. However you want to provide that information, just make sure that for every major point, you need at minimum 2 levels of major supporting point. So I should not see, Roman numeral 1 and then just an A under it, right? That's not enough to support an argument. You need at least 2 levels, okay? I would say that you could probably provide 3 levels or 4 levels, but that depends, okay? Also, make sure that you have at least, 3 good arguments or points that you're making to support the thesis statement. So I've only put 2 on here because that's what could fit and still make it somewhat readable for you on the screen so that you could see what the basic structure is. But remember, you need more than just those 2. So don't sell yourself short. Remember that your outline is a plan for the rest of your essay. So the more work you do on structuring your outline and planning it now, the less work you have to do with working on the organization and making sure it's good for your draft and your final draft. So this is what essentially that might look like on a page. We have double space, we have a header, we have the title. Obviously your title will be something other than title. We have a complete sentence of the thesis statement, and then we have those outline levels. So if we were to take a look at this, here's an example of something for an outline for what we are trying to do. We would have our header, our title, whatever we titled our paper, we're wanting to title our paper. We have our full statement of the thesis. Okay, it's strong, it's purposeful. And then at the highest level of the outline, we have either a complete sentence or a phrase that clearly lets your audience know what point you are going to be making. So notice this doesn't just say desirable because of regulation, right? It gives a little bit more context there to help us best with our drafting. So when it comes to those outline levels, your thesis statement absolutely needs to be a complete sentence. Your top level doesn't need to be complete sentences, but it needs to be a thorough phrase or clause that helps not only you understand what point you're trying to make, but also me, the instructor, to see how you are trying to structure your argument. If you have any questions about this presentation, or you are having questions about your outline, remember there is tutoring.com or tutor.com that's available. If you go to our Blackboard class, you can see it on the left-hand side menu. It'll say tutor.com. You don't need to create an account. If you go to it through our class, it'll direct you there immediately. You also have opportunities to schedule tutor in the Learning Enhancement Center. You should probably make an appointment for that one because there are other students who are trying to get in there. You can also give me a call, or you can email me and I can answer questions for you. Sometimes if your question is complex or it needs a complex explanation, I'm going to email you back and ask you to send me some times you're available to talk over the phone so that I can best explain it to you. All right, y'all take care.